Hello, current and future healthcare leaders. Welcome to the Health Admin Life podcast. My name is Brooke, and today I would like to welcome Carrie, Chief Operating Officer at David A. Winston Health Policy Fellowship. Carrie, can you tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are?
Sure. Thank you so much, Brooke. This is wonderful. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and your listeners. I have been living in DC for about 30 years. I grew up in New York and moved here to attend George Mason University and never left. So I've been working in DC in sort of administrative roles over the last 30 so years. Otherwise, that's basic. That's the basics for me.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And then also, some people may have not known about me either. I also did my undergrad at George Mason, which is
Yes.
awesome, right outside of DC, Northern Virginia. Absolutely loved it. So it's cool we have that in common. And my next question is something similar, is thinking about your position and your job and what you do. I think a lot of people are probably curious about what you do, or at least what the fellowship entails, if you can share a little bit more about that.
I would love to. The Winston Fellowship is split into two separate programs. We have the Winston Fellowship Program, and that is a 1 year fellowship program for two fellows each year, 3 months doing appointments all around DC, meeting with health policy experts, traveling, attending conferences, mentorship, network. It's just an incredible experience for anybody who wants to jumpstart their career in health policy or health administration in DC. And then we also have a scholarship program. And with that, we have up to 20 $10,000 scholarships each year.
Wow.
And yes, and the scholars get to then come into DC, paid for by Winston, to attend a dinner, and then they are able to attend this symposium. And our symposium is a day of panels with health policy experts as well, meeting former fellows, mixing with our board members. It's just another incredible opportunity to just immerse yourself in the health policy world. So having those two programs and the symposium, I work with the board to make sure that we keep those programs going, we keep them engaging, we keep them exciting, and keep them going for another 40, 50 years. And that's the big picture. For the day-to-day, I do everything from payroll to HR to scheduling, travel, agendas, just kind of the everyday support. But I know if I don't support, we can't keep things going. So I'm like the engineer to keep the trains running.
I love it. And thank you for sharing about not only you, but also the fellowship and scholarship. I think I would have loved to learn about this opportunity sooner. I had no idea about it. And then I fell upon it. And then you and your team reached out, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like I need to have you guys on the show. Like this is wonderful. And knowing that there's 20, $10,000 scholarships, incredible. That's phenomenal. I think so many people are going to be shocked, but also so excited. And hopefully, this will bring in more applicants to the pool. Um,
I do hope so. That's what we're looking for.
I love it. And my next question is thinking about what the company is, but also your background. Would you say this is more like the fellowship itself is geared towards policy, or is it like nonprofit? And then how long have you been in the industry?
Well, it's a little bit of a mix. For Winston, Winston is a nonprofit that has been around for over 40 years. Started sort of mid 80s, late 80s. And I've been doing the administrative support side for different nonprofits and organizations for about the 30 years. I think it's a mix between education and government. We have our fellows who are recent graduates, and they have the education, but now they're moving into getting the experience. But we have our scholars who have not yet finished their education. So they're getting the education wrapped up, but then with us, they can learn. I think it helps them, I guess, focus on this is definitely what I want to do. or this is maybe not what I want to do in DC, but I want to do it on a state level. There's, scholars don't have to be just looking for jobs in DC, which is a big difference. So I think it is a mix. It's definitely government and definitely policy, but it could be many different issues. And we're here to help that 1 year, help them get educated, get sorted out, get comfortable so they can move forward in the health policy careers.
Thank you. And knowing this is a little bit different than healthcare companies, but also learning about your background, I'm guessing it's probably non-traditional. How did you get to where you are?
I was laughing at that. I just very basically started as a receptionist and then moved on to client associate to administrative executive assistant level versions in different jobs. And then with this job, I was very fortunate. I wound up connecting with a board member with Winston, and he said that Winston was looking for someone to be the full-time staff contact leader of Winston on the daily basis to help the board and keep everyone engaged. So I was very lucky with that, and I guess kind of put together all the skills that I've had over the years, and now they're all getting put to use in one position, which is awesome. I also think it shows a great opportunity or a great example of when opportunity happens. It's, I guess things happen when they're supposed to happen. But for DC, it is the way it happens. It just seems to be, this is the perfect example. Just knowing somebody, you sort of fall into things, and that's how I've sort of moved my career. It's a lot of knowing someone or doing the job, doing a really good job and trying really hard. And sometimes you have to put the hours in a little longer maybe than you'd like early on, but that's the way you get noticed.
Exactly. It's like building those soft skills and technical skills at the same time.
Absolutely.
Mixed with networking to help and just working and gaining experience. So all of it.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing your story. Now, more of the fun questions are, again, I know you're in a non-traditional realm, but what is your favorite thing about working in healthcare
Well, gosh,
or at the company?
I think that why I have sort of stayed working for healthcare companies is I love the feeling of doing something good. When I worked for a hospice, people may feel that would be sort of scary or miserable, but I have to say it was one of the most impactful places and impactful positions I've ever had. It just sort of changed my thinking. I just think people in healthcare, I find they really are trying to do something good. They're in for the right reasons, and it's
rewarding.
There's a lot going on,
yes,
but they really are. Whether you like what they're saying or what they're doing, everybody has good intentions. I think for the large part to really do something correct, especially on the Hill with Hill staff and health policy.
It's not easy. I think in healthcare, you know that you're going to be making an impact directly or indirectly. And so I think that's the really rewarding part of it. Does it make it easy? No, especially I know from your experience working in hospice, I know that could not have been easy. But thank you for your service. And even so, like giving back in this way, working for a nonprofit, helping to build up the early career risk is incredible. And so thank you for what you do. Now, maybe one of the more fun topics, since we are thinking about early careerists, is do you have any advice to aspiring leaders who want to get into the field, or even with the scholarship or fellowship, advice for applying?
I've been thinking about this, and especially since we just had our scholarship applications come through, I think it's very important, since I look at them, the initial rounds coming through, I think the main thing, the first thing that I see is the resume. And having a resume that's tailored to the job or the internship or the fellowship that you're applying for is very important, and it's noticed. People notice if you're looking for something education like a fellowship scholarship, but you have your education way down on the resume, that's not correct. You know, that's sort of, you got to tailor it for the different positions. I think the letters of recommendation, huge, and I recommend as soon as possible to make that network, make that connection with your career counselor, with your professor, you know, anyone that you would potentially look to have those letters done, or be able to ask them, and make sure that they know what you're applying for, they have the correct information. It's really a big deal, or a big difference, I think, when you could tell somebody does not know what they're even writing the letter for. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah,
like
I know what you
they
mean.
right. They give me a letter for the fellowship, but they meant it was for the scholarship. That's, you
Mm.
know, but then
Or putting the
also,
wrong title or like the wrong company. I've seen people do that, and
yes.
it's like, oh no, it's like a fatal flaw. And checking your
And
work is so
I
important.
think having 3 to 4 options out there, letter writers is big, because a lot of times people may find out about the fellowship or scholarship a week before the deadline.
Hmm.
And
That happens.
if they only have two, one could be on vacation. So you have to make sure that you're getting, you know, you've got these things lined up. But also, looking at being rounded on your resume, having, you know, great grades, wonderful. That's, you know, absolutely what we're looking for. But on the other side, making sure that you have good community involvement. You know, it's good to see that healthcare is your passion. You do have a sense of what you want to do and the changes you would like to make. So I think those are sort of the key things for resumes when our board and selection committee looks at them.
And maybe one other question too to add on top
Mhm.
of that is I've reviewed many resumes. One, because I do that right now as a free service to individuals. And so I've seen a lot. I've also hired and onboarded fellows. So understanding what it takes and the type of caliber that is needed on a resume. Is
Yes.
that something you're looking for when it comes to format, but also content? How formal should it be? And do you really need to be able to write cohesively and be articulate?
You do, and yeah, I mean, and it is noticed,
Okay.
and I mean, I think writing skills is huge, especially for fellows. I think because you know, you have to remember these fellows are going to be working on the Hill, and they're going to be writing. They're going to be writing memos for senators, for congressmen. You know, that's a big deal, and learning to be a good writer, be a good researcher, good comprehension is fantastic. You know, we appreciate having job experience, but having those skills as well. And I think it's also a time though too with the interviews or application. It's not a time to shy back. You know, don't hold
No,
back.
don't be too
You know,
humble.
exactly.
Mhm.
Don't be humble. Just don't at all. Put it all out there. That's
Agree.
it. You know, every year it's an incredible group. It just keeps getting better and better and more impressive each year. So everyone who meets our fellows year to year, they're just constantly blown away with
Oh,
just
that's
the
great.
level.
That's wonderful. And maybe one last question when it comes to that
Sure.
is, from my understanding, a fellow might be different. What I've heard in the past and what I've known in the past is that fellows usually are individuals that have completed or finishing their master's program. Is that what you would consider a fellow, or is there different requirements?
Our fellows have, for the most part, have just graduated like last weekend, and then they start in June. So
Like graduated their master's or
they're
undergrad?
master's
Or
program. So
master's. Okay. Thank you.
they're just starting. It's their first job out, you know,
Mm.
after their graduate. Now they can also graduate in the December before, so December 2023, they
Okay.
could have, and then just, you
Hmm.
know, sometimes they'll do a part-time job or a
Right.
job or something extra for the semester. but it's May, usually graduation, and then
Okay.
take a vacation quickly because they come to DC and it's a busy next few months.
Yes, I can imagine. And maybe thinking back on my experience, I did do a fellowship. It was like a non-traditional fellowship in a strategy department. But they required me to have my full-on degree. And so what was different from my graduate experience is I think there's about 7 different grad programs for MHAs that require a fellowship, but you don't get your diploma until that third year.
Okay.
So in my instance, the hospital I'm working at required me to have my degree. So I had to do a mini internship or residency in my last semester, and then I got my diploma. Though I think students are probably wondering, do they have to have diploma in hand, or if they're a school that requires a fellowship, can they complete your program and then get their degree?
You have to have your
Out of the form.
degree in
Okay,
hand. That's
good
it.
to know.
Yep.
Thank you.
Because it's your next chapter.
Hmm.
There's no time
Completely
to
understand.
finish your degree. Once you start this, you're not going to want to go back to finish it after the
No, and
fellowship,
I
right?
agree. Like I finished all the school part. It's just some of those schools require you to do a fellowship, so you're not doing any classes, but they
Right,
just
right.
you have to make
It's
sure that you
intense,
finish like some sort of paper along with the fellowship at the end. That's the only
right?
requirement, but I completely understand the requirements behind it. So thank you. The audience will appreciate that feedback. Now, one of the last couple of questions, these ones are more the harder ones. Now that you've been working in healthcare, is there anything you'd like to improve on the policy side or just healthcare in general after working in it?
Oh, well, that's not my area, and
There.
I would never want to speak on that. Definitely not my area. Um, I know from my side what
Or
I
thinking also,
appreciate.
I know maybe to make this a better question for you
Hmm?
too, is thinking of what we discussed last time is understanding and the need for educating new grads and helping them in the world. I know at least with your company, they do a great job of doing so. So maybe that's something you could speak to instead.
Yes, that's that's great.
Wonderful.
Thank you. We definitely, this is the whole drive of our board. This is their purpose for Winston, is to get the fellows as prepared as possible to and comfortable as possible to get them their job after their placement. So they have their year, and then it's up to them to move on to their next job. But with this network, it's just incredible. And usually not too hard to find that next job. Most offices are very excited
Mhm.
to have them. I think the other thing that the board works on so much is to make sure that the fellows come into this experience with an open mind, and especially after being in grad school, it's years of school and books. And very often, I think, you can find anywhere what you believe in and find someone or something to agree with you on that. So coming to DC, not everyone's going to agree with everything you say or everything you do. And a lot of the meetings that you have to take during the fellowship, they're going to be different opinions, maybe totally different people than you would ever expect to have in your life normally. But you have to go in with an open mind and a lot of grace. I think most times the fellows find out this is incredible. This person's amazing or impressive, and they gain a much better understanding how people get to the way they're thinking now.
I
Right? Does that make sense?
I think that
It's
makes sense.
everybody has a history. Everybody has their in a way they grew
And
up
being
or
able to
things that
navigate
happened to them.
relationships.
Hmm.
It's like negotiating, relationship building, also being able to communicate and tell a good story. I think those are all important. But again, I think what's different about this is everyone, like you said, is going to have an opinion. So being able to persuade and back up your opinion and not just have a point of view, but have facts and data to back it up.
Yes,
The
do
research side of it.
research.
Yep. The
Yes.
research side. Yeah. The big
And
part of it too.
if you don't know, ask.
Yes.
That's what we've learned too. With so many changes over the last few years, our fellows have asked people, if we don't know how to respond or we're not sure even what to say
Mhm.
to a situation, then be honest and ask. That's it. That's what they're here for. That's the education side. Ask as many questions as possible. You cannot, there's no judgment. You should never feel silly for asking a question. Everybody here wants to help. They've all been in the same situation,
Mhm.
so they're happy to
And they
help.
want to give advice.
Absolutely.
And
So
then I
they
think
can pay it
too is
forward.
they'll be able to, like, when you ask a question looking for someone advice, it's nice to know like they in a way have a stake in the game. They want to see that their method works, so
Yes.
they want to see you succeed. So
That's
again, don't
great.
be afraid to ask questions.
Hmm.
um, well, thank you for sharing. My last question is around salary transparency, negotiation. Is there anything that you can tell listeners when it comes to that sort of content or how to negotiate?
Ooh.
Or anything you want to provide when it comes to the scholarship or fellowship?
Well, I think just for life negotiation is listening. I think if you listen to the person, you can find a way to negotiate. I think sort of coming in hot and being closed off to any option, you're never going to get to the middle. It's just not
Or
going to happen.
understand the
You
why?
have to compromise. You just have to be able to pick up the phone and call or have a coffee with somebody and talk to them. Texting or messaging or tweeting out, that's not the way to make change like that. No. Yeah, and finally for the fellowship and scholarship, our website www.winstonfellowship.org. We have all information on there, and you can also find information to contact me. And if you're interested in applying to the fellowship program, which the application process starts in August. So if you're interested in applying, you're not really sure, you can look online. And if you do have questions, I'm happy to answer them. But our former fellows, our current fellows are also absolutely happy to help and answer any
Even
questions.
better. Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Sometimes you just need to know from the current fellows, it's like, is this really as cool as it sounds? Or is it hard to be in DC? What is it really a daily life like, Or asking, things to do in the application.
Good point.
What's the process like?
Agreed. Well, on that note, my actual next question was like how to stay in touch with you. So it's great to look on the website. And I want to
And
thank you
LinkedIn.
in LinkedIn. So
Hmm.
I'll make sure that we include that information. But I want to thank you, Carrie, for your time today. This has been wonderful getting to know you as well as the David A. Winston Fellowship and Scholarship, uh, all of that. So thank you. But on that note, I want to thank everyone for listening. This show is brought to you by Riverside and Spotify for podcasters. To listen to more, look at the link in my bio at Health Admin Life on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube.